Here we go! I can't believe it's been 6 months since I was last allowed to work in court. And now here I am, back at the Old Bailey. Ah, Mr. Naruhodo. Good morning, Professor Hairbrain. I don't understand, it doesn't make any sense. The atmospheric pressure in here is off the charts. I never felt anything like it. It's crushing me. I feel it every time I'm here. The gravity. Well, this is Britain's highest court. But are you telling me it's fitted with some kind of device that can actually control air pressure? I think it's probably all in the mind. Ah, yes, well, you won't let me down, will you, Mr. Naruhodo? I'm counting on you in today's trial, to save my life. To save the secret of my super high voltage instantaneous kinesis machine from being made public. Yes, I understand. I know what I have to do. I have to establish that the explosion 2 days ago was nothing more than an unfortunate accident. Well, I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, really. Justice will prevail. My commiserations, Mr. Naruhodo. You appear to have been lumbered with a most tiresome case here. Mr. Sholmes, I didn't expect to see you here. That was very mean, Runo, leaving me alone at home with Hurley. It took me at least an hour to wake him. Is it, are you... Herlock Sholmes? Indeed, sir. I am he. Herlock Sholmes. I've heard all about your exploits, even whilst living in Germany. Ah yes, Ranced magazine is on sale in Germany too. This month's installment was sublime. Your deduction in The Adventures of Silver Blaze was wonderful. The Adventure of Silver Blaze. Ah yes, memorable case indeed. It concerns a snake, I seem to recall. No, that was a speckled band. Well, thank you for coming. I do appreciate your support. I'm sorry to disappoint you, my dear fellow, but I'm afraid I can't stay. Oh. I have urgent business at Madame Tuspel's. You mean your waxwork job? No, the waxwork abduction, of course. Madame has engaged my services. Ah, so you're trying to get to the bottom of that ransom note, are you? The week's wages depend on it. It does the safe return of the waxwork, as does the safe return of the waxwork, naturally. As such, I intend to give it my undivided attention. Oh well, never mind then. I understand. Of course, with my skills of observation and reasoning, resolving the matter will be easy as proverbial pie. I shall return forthwith. For until I solve the case, I shall have no money to afford a pie of any description. Oh, then you must absolutely give it your full attention, Hurley. Quiet, Iris, quiet. For life is riddled with irony, you know. Whenever I give something my full attention, I have a quite insatiable desire for a pie. One of the universe's intractable mysteries, you might say. Yes, quite definitely, absolutely, I totally understand. Is someone a little starstruck? I wish you the very best of luck, Professor Hairbrain. Why thank you. Before I depart, Mr. Naruhodo, a word in your ear, if you please. What's this about? As you have remarkably little grounding in science, I feel I ought to inform you. As compelling as this super high voltage instantaneous kinesis hypothesis may be, a practical implementation such as was attempted by the professor at the Great Exhibition is quite impossible. But the professor said the demonstration was a success. Yes, it would appear that he fervently believes it was. I've read Professor Bunny Brain's paper about it too, Runo, and I have to say, I'm sure it can't be done. It could barely be done theoretically, let alone practically. So he's completely barking up the wrong tree. I mean, I can tell you, no, it doesn't. It's like time travel. It doesn't exist. But could you Could an experiment that had no possibility of succeeding in fact succeed? That's contradictory. Yes, because the guy's an idiot. It's that contradiction that will be at the heart of the trial, I have no doubt. What's that supposed to mean? That's gonna be where you're gonna get stuck, is what that's gonna mean. To me, at least. Now I must hurry along. I wish you the best of luck, my dear fellow. See you later, Hurley. Well, it looks like you're on your own today, Runo, but chin up, you can do it. What about you, Iris? No, I'm afraid I can't help. I have something I need to do. I see. It's going to be a big surprise for you when you find out what it is. That sounds ominous. Counsel for the defense and the defendant. Court is about to be in session. Make your way into the courtroom at once. We are on our way. An experiment that laws of science say can't possibly succeed, and a scientist is convinced that it did. That's the riddle you have to unlock here, Ryonosuke. That's the key to this case. I mean, how I thought it worked is that the machine blew up and it just blew the guy through the window. It's just one of the things that got blown by the blowing up. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session. Okay, so. At this point, you would think I would guess. Try to take a guess as to who it is that killed Mr. Odiousman. Now the second case was a multi-part. Which is the tradition for Ace Attorney cases, but nevertheless, the first game didn't have any multi-parts. It was only the second game that had a multi-part. So this one could also be a multi-part. Most Ace Attorney games it would be. The third case is a multi-part. But the first game didn't have any, so the pattern could be broken. So, first we have Susato. Generally, the assistant is sometimes the accused, but never in any Ace Attorney case I know of. Again, I don't know of most of them in Dual Destinies, but otherwise, most I know of, all of the ones I know of, the assistant is never actually the perpetrator. Often accused, but never the person to actually do it. She's also kind of the assistant, so they both kind of have assistant plot armor. They also have somewhat strong alibis, for we assume Susato's in Japan. She could not be, but we assume she's in Japan. And then Iris was at home, as far as we understand. Herlock Sholmes. Come on, seriously? If Herlock Sholmes becomes like the perpetrator, that would happen in like the fifth trial, if it would ever happen. Male Strongheart, or like Male Stormheart. I always say I could imagine him being a perpetrator, but I would think they would save that for the last case if it was. They wouldn't do that now. Odiousman, well, he's dead. You could argue it was a suicide, but that's, again, Ace Attorney's never done that. And Ace Attorney generally does not do that. Just because of the because Ace Attorney is supposed to give you that satisfaction of pinning down the culprit while they're in the witness stand and seeing them break down. You can't really do that with a suicide. It doesn't really fit the, template. Why would this guy make him sabotage his own experiment and make himself look like a fraud? Maybe he knew his thing wouldn't work. But then, why would he make himself look like even worse by killing somebody? Again, the prosecutor can be a culprit. That is a thing. However, it only happens on the last case. And so, I would not expect that to happen on this case. So we still haven't gotten a candidate yet. This guy, which I presume is Kazuma, which somehow faked his death actually, and all the Russian sailors were in on it, so they all claimed he died too, when he really didn't, including the coroner. Did Kazuma do it? Well, it's certainly possible. That's the thing. But I think they're gonna string this out as a big revelation for the 5th case. So I think it's a little bit too early in the game to reveal the masked man's true identity, which means it's too early in the game for him to be a culprit. So I don't think it's him. Gina. What in the world? Gina is too much of a reoccurring character. She's kind of a old bag, or old windbag kind of character. Or, I forgot that character from the last case of the second Ace Attorney game. Like the blonde-haired lady. She's kind of like that. So, that gives her sort of this kind of gumshoe-like plot armor. Gregson has gumshoe plot armor. This is the only person in my entire stack of people that I have so far that it could be. So it has to be either Esmeralda Tuspels or someone we have not been introduced to yet. Now the last case, that's that thing that Ace Attorney often does, is they won't introduce the character yet until the second installment of the trial, like in between the two. It's something that definitely does happen. But the last case, with the fat lady, yes I said that, I forgot her name already. You know, supposedly would have poisoned Shamspear. One of the only cases I know of an Ace Attorney where the victim didn't die. But of course there was two where that didn't happen, and they both were second cases. No, the second trials. On the first game was the third case. Actually, it was the fourth case. Yeah, it was actually the fourth case. Never mind. What was I saying? I gotta do something with food here. Okay, I was talking about cases where the victim doesn't die. Yeah, there's two I know of. One is the one where the rotund girl ends up with a knife in her back, and we had Rolly moves the crime scene to the other side of the road. And the second one was the one with Shamspear. So, well, anyway. Tuspels is the only person in my docket who it could be, really. And so now I have to decide if it's too far-fetched to be Tuspels. Or so much so that it requires the game to introduce a new character. Thing is, like, she would be at her wax exhibit, you would expect, the whole time, right? You wouldn't like, how would she wouldn't even have gone to the Great Exhibition. That's the issue. That might be the, Huh. Yeah, but the theft of their waxworks has to tie in. It has to tie into this somehow. I know it already tied in by being an element, by, like, segueing into Van Zyke's backstory. But it's gotta tie in another way as well. It's not done tying in. So I know Tuspels is gonna come up in some way. Huh. Okay, at this point, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna guess it's Tuskville's. And somehow, by some crazy twist, that somehow becomes the case, even though it seems absurd at the moment. We are sitting today for the public trial of Professor Albert Harebrain. I now call upon the counsels of the prosecution and defense to declare their willingness to proceed. The prosecution is ready. The defense is ready, my lord. I'm 6 months out of practice, and what's more, I'm without Susato-san today. Is it just my imagination, or does the air in here feel even more oppressive than usual? So, I must say I recollect the victim of this case all too well. Mr. Odious Man. Mr. S-Man was well known as a financier, though that was merely a front of his diverse criminal activities. It was only a month ago that the man appeared in court prosecuted by you, Lord Van Zykes. The jury unanimously found him not guilty, because every member of the jury had been bribed, by the sound of it. These powerful London criminals are prepared to go to extreme lengths to keep their freedom. But 2 days ago, on the 21st of October, Mr. S-Man met his end. The work of the Reaper, was it? Why is the judge saying this? If that is how your lordship would describe divine retribution. But the fact remains that Mr. S-Man's death was a direct result of the actions of the accused, Professor Harebrain. Very well, then. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have been selected at random to represent the will of the people. Are the 6 of you ready to fulfill your societal duty? I am most gratified to have been selected to carry out this important civic duty, my lord. Why are they all, like, nicely dressed this time? Oh, have a man's fate in the palm of one's hand. Oh gosh, oh golly, it sends shivers down my spine. Science experiments, magic, conjuring tricks, courtroom trials, all are nothing more than performances. Any spurious scholar that defies the reputation of science deserves to hang. We have to listen to what's said on both sides of the fence, and I'm settled on one. That's it, isn't it? Really? Wasn't like this in my day. Wasn't like this at all. That's the police killer Ottermole lookalike again. And he's as exhausted as ever, it seems. Now, as I'm sure you are all aware, the incident we are here to judge today is tragically took place at the Great Exhibition shortly after its opening. Though the death toll could have been far worse, with the exception of the victim, no one was killed. Nevertheless, the dream of the science being exhibited rapidly turned into a nightmare for the spectators. A tragic turn of events, and as such, the eyes of all London. No, the whole world will be on this trial. It's our duty to reach a swift and just conclusion, I feel. So, your opening statement, please, Lord Van Zykes. At the heart of this incident is technology never before demonstrated anywhere in the world. One of science's latest developments, I take it. The government is keen on to capitalize on the Great Exhibition to improve Britain's technological advantage. The technology being demonstrated by the accused was described as super high voltage instantaneous kinesis. Good lord. It's designed to disassemble human subjects using extremely high voltage electricity and beam them instantly to another location where they are subsequently reassembled. Is such a thing even within the realms of possibility? Well, I don't believe it, that's for sure. Disassembling people with electricity, my goodness, how shocking. Oh, the whole idea is absurd. The hypothesis would never stand to scrutiny. Sir, I believe you are a fellow of the Royal Society, are you not? An expert in your field? I am, and my verdict on the matter can be considered final. Instantaneous kinesis is poppycock. So this expert and Mr. Sholmes are in agreement. It's impossible. What are the prosecution's view on the matter? The prosecution would assert that the accused's instantaneous kinesis demonstration was a success. Now this is some weird posturing going on here. They're sandbagging or something. Order! The professor's hypothesis is currently under investigation by the British government. If it is deemed to have merit, a substantial research grant would have been made available. The accused made use of the invention built on his new hypothesis to take Mr. Esmond's life, in order to be the sole benefactor of the grant. But how would it work though? Like, how would that get you the grant money? If you just killed the guy in front of everybody. Your stance, Van Zykes, is absurd, for once. Usually you're not that absurd. Usually you're pretty reasonable. But this is absurd. Phoenix Van Zykes. But this disastrous demonstration was no accident. It was carefully designed from the outset to end the life of the victim. Thank you, Lord Van Zykes. The prosecution's stance is clear. But you will now bring forth witnesses to substantiate your claims. Gladly, my lord. Bailiff, show the first witness to the stand. Gregson. Witnesses, state your names and occupations for the court. Yes, sir. Tobias Gregson, Detective Inspector of Scotland Yard's Homicide Division. I was on duty at the demonstration on the day in question and in charge of the following investigation. Albert Harebrain, Scientist. You were born in England, but have been carrying out research in Germany in recent years, correct? Yes. Yes, that's right. After graduating from university here in Britain, I went to work in Germany and made an amazing discovery, which is what brought me back. I had to demonstrate my incredible hypothesis at the Great Exhibition. What you demonstrated was incredible, alright. An incredible explosion. Why is Gregson being peanut gallery-y? But the science was a success. Instantaneous kinesis worked. Everyone saw it, they must have done. Yes, there was the terrible accident, but the demonstration of my hypothesis was a success. Well, that much is undeniable, as shown in this photograph taken by the forensic investigation team. Okay. We need to look immediately for signs that he is a wax recreation. This was taken inside the Crystal Tower. I take it, the centerpiece of the exhibition, no less. That's right, my lord. Seems the victim rammed straight through it. I see. Very well, submit the photograph as evidence. Photograph of the victim has been entered into the court record. As the court heard, the victim in this incident was Mr. Odious Man. Okay, I gotta, look at this photograph here. Okay, not much going on here. I wonder why he's strapped to a board. Okay, so he was strapped to a board, and he got blown with the board. Okay, so this is pretty easy to it would seem pretty easy to show that didn't work here, because the thing he was strapped to was also transported with him, and that's not really the point, was it? There have been a number of allegations made against the man, but putting them aside for the time being. He was the man who financed the researcher for the experiment and the demonstration itself. I see. So to summarize the situation, the defendant is accused of taking the life of the man who founded his work. Would that be correct? Exactly. But couldn't it be that the explosion was caused by some malfunction in the apparatus used for the demonstration? That's right, that must be it, my splendid machine. My poor splendid machine. You saw it yesterday, didn't you? We can't even examine the wreckage thanks to the Special Dispensation for Scientific Equipment Act. What? The wreckage, the wreckage? But that being the case, how can the facts be established? How can it possibly be determined whether this was an accident or a deliberate and malicious act? Extremely simply, my lord. I beg your pardon? Isn't that right, witness? What, sorry, me? No, your neighbor. Yes, sir, it was murder, plain and simple. Anyone could state that with complete certainty. What? How can you possibly think that? Thank you, Inspector. I think we had better proceed to formal testimony. You will explain to the court on the grounds you claim this experiment had to have been front for murder. I mean, this is a really stupid way to do a murder, but whatever. A front for murder. The corpse that went crashing through the Crystal Tower had a broken neck. I made a minor miscalculation in the angle of the beam projection, that's all. That was my mistake. But the post-mortem examination revealed another injury, a fatal wound. There was a lesion in his chest where he'd clearly been stabbed by something sharp right in the heart. So the victim was killed before he went anywhere, and this fellow's the only one who could have done it. Extraordinary business. In addition to suffering a broken neck, the victim was stabbed in the heart. Information I would really like to have heard from someone other than the judge. The coroner says death would have been all but instant from a wound like that. You could say, in fact, that the victim was killed twice by the accused. No, and no. That couldn't be further from the truth. It's impossible to kill somebody twice. I have here the experiment plan document that was submitted to the security team. The victim stood himself inside something called the birdcage, ready to be beamed instantly. To the second level of the Crystal Tower, about 25 yards away. The experiment did not go according to plan, however. As the machine was put into operation, there was a large explosion. The blast caused the beam transmitter to point higher than intended. Accordingly, the kinesis resulted in birdcage materializing in midair, from where it subsequently fell, crashing through the glass of the Crystal Tower's large round window. My word, one assumes the victim's neck was broken upon impact with the tower then. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen. The machine was just too powerful. But honestly, really, I swear, it was just an accident, a terrible accident. Unfortunately, that excuse can't save you. No, not considering the sharp murder weapon that pierced the victim's heart. Murder weapon? What are you saying? This is the autopsy report submitted by the coroner. The prosecution would like it entered into the court record. The request is granted, counsel. The autopsy report has been entered into the court record. I was there in person, you know. I saw the whole ludicrous performance. Odious man, 47, British. Time of death, 21st of October at 2:20 p.m. Hemorrhage of a wound in the chest that pierced the heart, inflicted by a sharp implement. Additional observations, a broken vertebrae most likely resulting from impact after a sudden fall from considerable height. And the only other person on stage was Mr. Esmond. Was that disgraced excuse for a scientist. Then really, by all accounts, it must have been him. Oh, to think otherwise, really. Very well, counsel for the defense. Proceed with the cross-examination, please. Oh, yes, my lord. I need to focus here. It's been a while. Not for me, it hasn't.
Hold it!
Are you suggesting that it's because you fell from a considerable height? Exactly. Which highlights something else about this whole rum business. What's that? The fact that the instantaneous kinesis itself was a success. After the explosion, the cage with the fella inside suddenly appeared out of nowhere in midair. So although the experiment ended in disaster, the so-called instantaneous kinesis did actually occur. Remind us, Professor. What was the cause of the fatal disaster? I made a minor miscalculation in the angle of the beam projection, that's all. That was a mistake. That was my mistake. So the angle of projection is critical, is it? And you calculate it yourself personally? Absolutely. The calculation is far too complicated for anyone but me to carry out. Only you got it wrong, didn't you? Yes, that's right. That's the point. The calculation is so complicated, even I can't make a mistake. Do people fall for that brazen confidence? I should try it. I took into account the subject's height and weight, the wind direction, the ambient temperature. I considered every possible variable, so I don't understand how this could have happened. Obviously, then you had to include the weight of the clothes Mr. Ismail was wearing at the time, I suppose. Ah. Crackling comets. The answer should have been 3. The answer should have been 3. So much for safety first. The 3 must be for safety third.
Hold it!
Another fatal injury, you say? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I didn't think I'd have to spell this out, but here we go. Just because there are 2 fatal wounds doesn't mean I'm saying the victim had 2 lives to lose, does it? 2 right. Obviously, at first, we thought the Broke had died due to a spine snap in half as well. But you're saying that's not the case? You'll get your answer once I'm finished my fish and chips if you don't keep butting in every few seconds. But we all know that's a bottomless bag. That's meta. The victim plummeted 30 feet into a glass tower. It would be reasonable to assume that that is the cause of death. Right, that's what we all thought. But it was a red herring, wasn't it? There was a lesion on his chest where he'd clearly been stabbed by something sharp right in the heart.
Hold it!
The defense knew nothing of this crucial information. The prosecution received this report from the forensic investigation team only this morning. That was the first we knew of it as well. I can only apologize for the impossibility of informing the defense. Sarcastic and insincere thanks. So what was the nature of this sharp object? Among the accused tools that we were in use at the demonstration, one is of particular interest. This. Ah yes, that would appear to be some kind of screwdriver, wouldn't it, Counsel? Ah! There he is. My trusty little companion, Andrew. Andrew? Of course. Ah, do you know each other already? He's one of my dear friends, like all my tools. I've named them all, you know. We're one big happy family. Andrew is my flathead screwdriver, of course. His brother Michael is crosshead. Well, it appears your beloved Andrew has a red stain on his shank. That isn't... It's blood. Beyond all reasonable doubt. No. And that's not all. The long, sharp shape of this Andrew fellow was completely consistent with the victim's wound. What? Order! The court will enter this friend of the defendant as the evidence. So one of Professor Hairbrain's tools is the murder weapon? Great.
Hold it!
What grounds do you have for saying that? Do you really need to ask? There were only 2 people on that public experimentation stage in front of the whole crowd. The victim, Mr. Odious Man, and the accused, Professor Hairbrain. And we know for certain that before the experiment, the victim was alive. That's right, I saw him with my own eyes. Furthermore, following the explosion and kinesis, nobody went anywhere near the body. In other words, only someone else on stage was the victim could possibly have done it.
Excuse me.
Professor Hairbrain, do you have some information that may be relevant here? Professor? Sorry. I was just calculating the optimum coefficient of electrolysis to separate molecules in the human body. And the witness stand is the best place for that? It seemed as though you might have something to say. What Inspector Gregson's last remark about Inspector Gregson's last remark. Yes, that's right, of course. He just said that nobody else could have done it, didn't he? Yeah, that's right. Who else could have stabbed the victim, I don't know, but there's no way that I could possibly have stabbed Mr. Isman, as you say. Explain, please, Professor. Of course, this cold-hearted policeman may not be aware, I suppose, but humans are warm-blooded mammals with blood running continuously through their veins. I think Gregson does know that, actually. I had heard. Then surely you see, if I'd plunged something the size of Andrew into the man's chest, the whole stage would have been a bloodbath. No, blood-swimming pool. But thousands of Londoners are watching me at the time. And yet not one of them claims to have seen a swimming pool of blood. Well, no, I suppose not. You see, not one. True, I didn't see anything like that. Well done, Professor. That was a great counter-argument. Pray forgive the discourtesy if I savor a drop from my hallowed chalice to accompany my old friend's adducing. Here's to you, Albert. Oh, you're so kind, Barack, but I'm really not a patch on you. No, you're not. No. You've neglected to mention one crucial possibility. I have? A particular situation in which very little bleeding would have resulted from a stab wound. Oh, of course. Leaving the screwdriver in, they would have found it at the crime scene. Inspector, enlighten the court, please. Yes, sir. Where are we going with this? Very well, you will image your formal testimony now, Inspector Gregson. The weapon the victim was stabbed with must have been left in his body whilst he was being beamed through the air.
Hold it!
Why would you think that, Inspector? With any wound, it's only when you pull the weapon out that profuse bleeding occurs. Or else it's still lodged in the body and acts as a stopper of sorts, for want of a better word. I see. You don't need a medical degree to be aware of this fact. It's common knowledge for any investigator. Where is Susato-san when you need her? Well, you would have known. If you ask me, Oh wait, actually no you wouldn't, because that was brought up in a trial that Susatu-san was the defendant. Okay. Yeah, he's right. If you ask me, this bloke masked what he was doing from view with his body before stabbing his man in the chest. Then he beamed the victim off the stage with his fancy device, the screwdriver's still where he planted it. I would never do such a thing. Not my precious tools, I would never use them for such dirty work. You only use tools for their intended purpose. That's common knowledge for any scientist. The fact remains. Lack of blood at the scene can easily be explained, as the prosecution has demonstrated. Oh. So that's all the testimony I have to work with. I had no idea the victim had been stabbed. That changes everything. Evans likes to keep that to himself until now on purpose, to gain the advantage. Oh well, I suppose all I can do is press these witnesses for as much new information as possible. So this is the fifth one is the one that we had him add. The weapon the victim was stabbed with must have been left in his body whilst he was beamed through the air. So we gotta present on this. Photographic print of the victim taken after he was ostensibly been beamed to the Crystal Tower. Shows an apparent stab wound in the chest. Yeah, the picture shows... So, there's two things that show this. One is that in the picture, there's no screwdriver in his chest. The second is, the screwdriver was found at the site of the explosion, not the site of the body. So you have to argue it flew out during the zapping. I'm gonna go for the picture first. For this.
Objection!
This is wrong. I lose health immediately. Okay. Let's try a different one. Seems like it was the real murder weapon. Anyway.
Objection!
Wow, I am just blasting myself. This is why I'm hammering on this, because this is the one that we had to... This looks like the new statement we had to introduce to testimony. So it's not this. It's not this. Check the autopsy report. Our in-date autopsy report. I'm just gonna let me take the other statements first before I do something. Man, I'm just gonna destroy myself. Okay, this is correct. The autopsy report agrees with this, so I don't want to don't present on that. Post-mortem examination revealed another injury, a fatal wound. Yes, there was one. This is too silly. It did have a broken neck. So the only one that could possibly be wrong is the last one. Is this one. So I know this is what we have to present on. for pretty much absolute certainty. This is a murder weapon, but this is the next best thing to present.
Objection!
It's wrong. It's also wrong. What the hey? Holy smokes. Wow. Let me try pressing it again. I don't like pressing the last statement because it makes you wrap around. It's like an error in the game design. Okay, I decided to take a break to eat, and here's what happened in my head. Like, I kept, of course, thinking about this as I was going about my business, and I realized that I made a very bad mistake here. There's a rule you always should follow that I neglected. I don't know what, just don't learn from me here. That is, every time you get a new piece of evidence in the court record, you inspect it. I do not inspect this thing. Right? You might find something on this that shows something. And when you do, then it becomes viable. It becomes something that you can viably present. I've seen this unusually shaped handle before. It's the same screwdriver that was lodged in the grill on the floor of the HypoTheSis machine, which could be important information, so I should definitely make a note of it. There you go! A metal screwdriver that was found poking through the grill at the base of what remains of the HypoTheSis machine. It has a very distinctive handle. Now, we can present it, but not that statement. That's the wrong one. Now, we present this. I presented the right thing on the second try, it's just that you need to inspect it first. Because, just always inspect it first.
Objection!
I was so confident I was gonna be right that I said it like that. You saw that while the weapon remains in the body, there is very little bleeding. And now I actually will go eat and come back to this. Now that I've satisfied my... Yeah. Man, I lost like 3 lives on that stupidity. Okay, I'm back from dinner now. Continuing. You say that while the weapon remains in the body, there's very little bleeding. Is that unequivocal? Look, there was no blood on the experimentation stage, even though that's where the fellow was stabbed. The only explanation for that is if the screwdriver was still in the body, stopping any heavy bleeding. It's common medical knowledge, my learned friend, even on your side of the world. Literally true. Yes, but about the screwdriver. The thing is, we actually saw it at the scene ourselves on the experimentation stage. What? It was on the floor by the wreckage of the machine, poking through a metal grill. I went to pick it up, but the detective here stopped me. Isn't that right, Inspector Gregson? But then Iris picked it up, but he's not going to throw her under the bus. Now you come to mention it, yes. Inspector, are we to understand that you permitted the Defense Council to investigate? That you contraved the Special Dispensation for Scientific Equipment Act? No, not at all. I wouldn't do that. I just let him look, nothing more. It was very clear it wasn't to touch a thing. Yes, that's true. The screwdriver was in plain sight on the stage. But it shouldn't have been, should it? What are you getting at? If this to have been in the victim's body when the victim was beamed away by the machine, then it shouldn't have still been on the stage. That's right. It should have been beamed across to the Crystal Tower along with Mr. Isman. And been found still lodged in the victim's chest. Order! How do you explain this, Inspector? I don't... It looks as though everything that the victim had on his person moved with him when he was beamed. If the screwdriver was still in his chest when the instantaneous kinesis occurred, obviously that should have been beamed to the destination as well. Was it kind of like putting metal in a microwave, though? I guess the birdcage would have been metal, too. This is a strange situation. Even though people are saying that this instantaneous kinesis is a scientific impossibility, we're still basing arguments on the assumption that it did actually take place. Alright, time to tighten the screws here. My lord, if the prosecution is unable to explain this inconsistency in its argument, we can only conclude the testimony given to support cannot be relied upon. Lord Van Sykes is stumped. Well, but I was gonna say no, he's never stumped, but he might actually be stumped. Because this wasn't really... He was playing some weird game with this, right? Like, he didn't think he would need to have an explanation for this because he knows it isn't true. Right? He intentionally stumped himself. It sounded like pain. Your brain sounded like pain. Anyway, do you have something to say, witness? Yes, I knew it! It bears out the equations hold. Mr. Naruhodo, don't worry. About what? Without delving into the details, there is no inconsistency. What? Even if Andrew had been lodged in Mr. Isman's chest, my trusty tool wouldn't have moved. Andrew remained on the stage is consistent with my calculations. What? It would seem your illusions have been shattered. Clearly, we should hear the accused explanation. Or should I say, this brilliant scientist's explanation? This is ridiculous. Just when I found an inconsistency in the prosecution's argument. Scientists just make up stuff on the spot, don't they? Very well, the defendant will testify again. Provide us with a scientific explanation as to why the inconsistency asserted by the defense fails to hold. In the name of Apollo, I will, my lord. Apollo hasn't even been born yet, though, but whatever. To be clear, I'm still at the stage of gathering data in my research. My hypothesis states that kinesis cannot transport metal, though. Hence, the metal weapon would have stayed put. In other words, the point just raised by Mr. Naruhodo isn't an inconsistency at all. Mr. Isman was the patron of my research. Without him, my work wouldn't have been possible. Now I have a duty to protect the incredible machine that we built together. I would think metal would be the easiest to transport, given it's impossible to transport anything, but if... whatever. So, the thrust of your testimony, Professor, is that based upon his hypothesis, metal objects cannot be moved by this method of instantaneous kinesis. But hemoglobin can, because it's just one atom, and it's not... Well... Oh, just don't... Stagulator, ignore all physics. Just ignore everything. In other words, since the screwdriver is made of metal, even if it remained lodged in the victim's chest, its subsequent discovery on the stage, despite the victim being found elsewhere, is not an inconsistency. And therefore, Professor Albert Harebrain could still have been the killer. My great hypothesis holds, you see. We had to make the cage used to contain the subject from wood, for that very reason. Oh, well, now that I learn that, I was not addressing you, witness. Professor Harebrain? Yes? Whose side are you on here? I don't take sides, Mr. Naruhodo. No. I'm only interest lies in upholding my hypothesis. I'm a scientist, after all. And so you just get executed? That's okay. Is he working for us or against us? It's very hard to tell. Let's see how you cross-examine this testimony, my Nipponese friend. Yes, fire away, Mr. Naruhodo.
Hold it!
And yet your retort to my argument wasn't lacking in confidence in any way. No scientist can find the truth without first finding self-belief. Those were the words of a certain scientist I hold in the very highest esteem. But you realize that disproving my argument puts you in a very precarious position, don't you? No scientist should strive to protect himself more than he strives to protect the truth. More words of the same great scientist, you know? Words that are causing me a lot of trouble. Who is this scientist? I'm afraid I couldn't tell you, Mr. Naruhodo. But as soon as I remember the magnificent genius's name, you'll be the first to know. It might be worth keeping the names of your idols to okay. You're wasting your breath, my learned friend. The scatterbrain even forgets my name at times. Lord Van Zykes really did have a friend once, but I didn't notice hell freezing over. Yeah, I don't really know. I'm not very familiar with what goes on in hell either. I haven't been there personally. My hypothesis states, whatever.
Hold it!
Your hypothesis states it, so this isn't proven then? No, of course not. It's merely a hypothesis, but a good one based upon thousands of calculations. But it seems widely known that metals can't be decomposed by electrolysis. Yes, of course, so I am right. My hypothesis is clearly correct. What is it about incriminating himself that makes this man so happy? It's the whole reason that the bird cage is made of wood, you see. Sorry, the bird cage. Yes, that's what I call the C. obtusa cage. C. obtusa cage, in which Mr. Asman was placed for the kinesis. Oh, the jail cell in which the victim was detained. It does indeed seem to be made of a timber of some sort. There's so many things I could point out here. What's that between, like, his two spectacles? Is that metal? What about the chain hanging off? Is that metal? What about his coat button? Is that metal? There's a lot of metal I see here. Oh, I'll thank you not to refer to it as an instrument of incarceration, your lordship. In short, any weapon lodged in the victim when he was beamed away by instantaneous kinesis would have been left behind on the stage if it was made of metal, correct? Yes, that's it. Yes. It all fits perfectly with the mathematical model. But the ultimate conclusion, then, is that the defendant alone had the opportunity to inflict his fatal injury on the victim, is it not? Ah. Oh, indeed, sir. Someone beam me out of this nightmare.
Hold it!
You seem to be pleased by that. Yes, another example of my hypothesis holding true. But I sense some sarcasm, Mr. Naruhodo. Are you not pleased? No. I knew it. At the end of the day, I'm the one responsible for Mr. Esman losing his life. The advancement of science is no excuse. I know that. No, you're quite right. Tell the court, did you have a close relationship with Mr. Esman? Oh, well, no, not really. I mean, I'd only met him 2 or 3 times. And we only ever discussed my hypothesis and the project and the research grant, of course.
Hold it!
How did you come to know Mr. Esman in the first place? A year ago now, a small provincial science journal published a little paper about my work. That's a scientific journal? Good gracious, I should need new spectacles. I might have an extraordinary hypothesis, a great promise, but at the time I had no money. I had to eat tiny little meals in a tiny little cafe and drink watered down water out of tiny little glass. But Mr. Esman read the paper and came to visit me at my tiny little laboratory. And offered you money to help fund your work? Exactly, that's exactly what happened. I handled the theoretical side of things, and Mr. Esman provided me with an engineer for the practical. And the 3 of us produced that fantastic machine together. The machine that you brought to the Great Exhibition to demonstrate. We know Esman was just a criminal, so he had some ulterior motive for doing this. We had to apply to the government for some sort of inspection to be allowed to exhibit, I think. I didn't understand at all that side of things. Mr. Esman took care of all of it. He was a wonderful man, really. I owe him everything.
Hold it!
When you say that you built the machine together, does that mean that you were involved in its construction? Yes, well, not exactly. I'm not good with the practical side of machines myself, so the physical construction was done by an engineer. Little remains of your creation now, though, following the explosion. Repair will no doubt be impossible. Yes, I realize that, but still. If someone were to gather all the broken parts, they would discover the secret of my hypothesis. But Mr. Esman and I toiled over that machine for so long, we put our hearts and souls into it. I have to protect our work. It's what's left of the machine must be kept safe. That's only fair because what happened was an accident. That's the extent of the testimony then. Thank goodness for that. I don't want him doing any more damage. He's already basically proven that he could have been the culprit. But it seems as though all he really cares about is defending his hypothesis. Still, I wonder, what if his hypothesis is just fundamentally flawed? Right. Okay, so... Oh, what if it's supposed to be... Because if you interpret this super literally... what I would do is I'd refute this and say that metal was transported. However... Basically, it doesn't say that... This is basically saying it's a hypothesis of this. If we say a hypothesis is wrong, we're not finding inconsistency as testimony, we're just saying his hypothesis is wrong, right? If this, though, says there is an inconsistency because... So this is what you would... This is what you would present on if you were trying to take the statements literally and do this really rigorously. But the thing is, this is like probably what you wanted to... This has like the key words in it, right? Like the metal weapon would have stayed put. So it's kind of hard for me to decide which one you would present on. And what I would present would be this picture, because there are things in this picture that are metal, that got transported, right? And nothing new in the court record I need to inspect. Nothing new was added to his testimony, so that doesn't help me narrow down which one to present on, because usually you present on the one that was newly added. Yeah, so it's like a jungle. I guess I gotta go for it. So, the idea is, metal shown in the picture got transported. Your hypothesis is that it can't transport metal, but we see metal being transported. So there's an inconsistency in that sense.
Objection.
Phew, the music stopped. Professor Hairbrain, you said according to your hypothesis, nothing made of metal can be beamed by instantaneous kinesis using the machine you made. Is that right? Yes, that's right. Spot on. Exactly correct. In that case, I'd ask you to have a look at this photograph that was taken at the scene. In particular, I'd like you to pay attention to the victim's face. You can clearly see that Mr. Man was wearing a pair of spectacles with a metal rim. What? Metal? No, metal can't. That's not... Metal? No! We've already established that the proposed murder weapon, the screwdriver, was found on the stage. However, if your hypothesis is correctly predicted that outcome, it should also have predicted that the metal rimmed spectacles would be found in the same place. And my hypothesis! Professor Hairbrain, this isn't easy for me to say, but your hypothesis is clearly flawed. Order! Counsel, what is the implication of this? If on the day in question the alleged instantaneous kinesis never actually took place, then it's entirely possible that the victim was killed somewhere other than on the stage. In that case, someone other than the defendant could have been the culprit. But my hypothesis is sound. I proved it that day. The experiment was a success. The experiment was proof of all my work. If I could say something here, in my capacity as a fellow of the Royal Society. Yes, juror number 4. Go ahead. As a man of science, there's one thing I simply cannot abide. And that is fraud who pretends to be a fellow man of science. Wait, great Scott, are you suggesting my science is suspect? It's just been disproved, hasn't it? In front of all of us. In other words, the whole demonstration was a complete nonsense from start to finish. And I'm randomly pouring things that are colored in flasks and test tubes, which is really weird. Believe me, my fellow jurors, when I tell you that this man is a heel, a bounder, and a fraud. I say the wreckage of that machine should be stripped down and thoroughly examined. No, never. That machine is the essence of my entire hypothesis. It's protected by the Special Dispensation for Scientific Equipment Act. What the devil is that blasted act all about, eh? Who made up such a daft rule? I don't like the way this seems to be going. What's the best way for me to help the professor? Just wait. Always raise an objection. Just raise the objection.
Objection.
Professor Harebrain is just to perfect his invention. That would seem to be the case, yes? But even so what? Going to such trouble and expense to create a fake machine to display in public. He would have absolutely no reason to do such a thing. He had an obvious reason to do exactly that. For the research grant money. Ah. The government was foolish enough to have deemed the man's ridiculous notion plausible. But it would have to demonstrate it, though, in order for that to make sense. He and his conspirators would have received a handsome sum indeed. Conspirators? What would be the value of such a grant? 10 pounds? You're an order of magnitude out, madame. 500 pounds a year. Or that could live handsome on that much for years. The society noticed an increase in bogus public demonstrations in the field of science recently. And plenty of scientists arguing with each other to get the largest slice of the funding cake. People's greed is plenty motive enough for murder, I assure you. But why would a murder get this? No, I haven't deceived anyone, least of all the government. My hypothesis is sound. The science is sound. Please, you must believe me. No matter how unbelievable this hypothesis may seem to you, ladies and gentlemen, the fact remains that the victim was transported instantly to the Crystal Tower. Why is he saying this? Which means that the experiment was a success. Barak. And therefore, the only person who could possibly have committed this murder is the accused. Barak. What? It's so weird! Why is he insistent? I don't know. Where is this heading? I have no idea. My lord, if I may. Yes, Lord Van Zykes. The prosecution would like to summon new witnesses to the stand. New witnesses? What would the nature of their involvement be? Their nature? They were spectators of the demonstration of the exhibition, who were occupying special seats. Oh, here's what we're going to show that they couldn't have seen much because they were sitting right underneath it. Very well, the court grants the prosecution's request. I should very much like to hear from eyewitnesses to the incident. The prosecution's stance is clear. The experiment was no postiche. The accused killed the financier victim there on the public stage before the very eyes of the spectators. Now, my learned friend. Yes? It's time for you to make your own stance clear. There's clearly a flaw in the professor's hypothesis. I can definitely see that. But where does that leave me? We shall take a short recess now, during which time the prosecution will prepare its new witnesses to take the stand. As you wish, my lord. Good. In that case, court is adjourned for 20 minutes. It's like a weird trick where he's supposed to say the opposite, that his hypothesis was wrong. But, like, that's gonna make him look bad. But it's gonna contradict Van Zyke, which makes the prosecutor look bad. But they don't really care about how good the prosecutor looks. All they care about is the guy guilty or not? Really complicated. Anyway. Wow, that was a mistake. Mr. Naruhodo. What on earth were you playing at just now? Or rather, what on earth were you playing at all along? My hypothesis, my amazing hypothesis. You've been picking holes in it from the start. Sorry about that. But you promised me. You said you'd prove that that explosion was an accident, not murder. You said you'd keep my precious invention from falling into anyone else's hands. But all you've done so far is try to undermine me. Yes, I did make your promise, you're right. I said that I believe in you and fight for your freedom to the very end. But I also told you I was no scientist. I don't understand your hypothesis. The fact is, there's an undeniable flaw in your logic, isn't there? But I just run through some equations. Yes, you see, it's because my work is incomplete. Perhaps it is. Nevertheless, a man died as a consequence, didn't he? Wow, no. You're right, you're so right. It's all my fault. And I have no right to blame you for my failures. I'm a disaster, not just as a scientist, but as a human being. Well, that might be a little over the top. And while we're on the subject, what about Barack? He's being awful. Claiming his old university friend to be a murderer, you mean? Oh, I didn't switch voices. He's a disaster, not just a prosecutor, but as a human being. But no, wait, he's the Reaper, isn't he? Perhaps he's not classified as Homo sapiens anymore. Glad that's cleared up. Can I double check something with you? Yes, what? The machine, the demonstration you prepared. They were based entirely on your hypothesis, I presume. There was no trickery involved? I drew the plans for the machine with my very own hands. Every line was painstakingly drawn with a firm belief that science is the only future. So yes, it's true that my hypothesis hasn't reached maturity yet. But please, Mr. Naruhodo, you must believe in it. All right, Professor, I understand. Counsel, defendant. The prosecution's witnesses are ready to take the stand. Court is about to be in session again. Make your way into the courtroom, please. All hinges on that demonstration. The professor's hypothesis is sound as he claims. It leaves him as the only person who could possibly have killed the victim. But on the other hand, Mr. Sholmes was adamant. As practical implementation such as was attempted by the professor at the Great Exhibition is quite impossible. So really, what should I be trying to prove here? That's impossible, is what you're trying to prove. Prove the truth! In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby reconvene the proceedings of this court. Counsels for the defense and prosecution, are you ready for the new witnesses to testify? The prosecution is ready, my lord. As is the defense, my lord. So, Lord Van Zieks. I believe these next witnesses saw the demonstration on the day in question with their own eyes. Indeed they did. And as luck would have it, one of them is a police detective. So the testimony we're about to hear can be considered highly reliable. Perfect. Detective of all people. Particularly, it's Miss Lestrade, whom you tried to prosecute before. Oh goodness gracious. Well, I gotta pee. I'm back. The prosecution's stance remains unchanged. Though it ended in tragedy, the demonstration on the day in question was scientifically sound. And coincidentally, The sole person with the opportunity to have committed the act of murder is the only other individual to have been presented on the stage at the time, the accused. Thank you, counsel. The prosecution's position is clear. So, bring forth your witness now. Bailiff, show the witnesses in. The witnesses whose proximity to the incident on the day in question will clarify the truth unequivocally. Why would he use these people as witnesses? Okay. Like, one of them has specifically given false testimony before. And that false testimony was used to give a false acquittal while you were the prosecutor. Why are you okay with this? Witnesses, state your names and occupations for the court to hear. My name is Balthazar Loon. Is that supposed to be some sort of kind of pun on Belshazzar? I am the impresario of all the hot air balloons in vicinity of the experimento stage. My name is Wilhelm Gottrich Sigmund Orstein. I have come to see the great exhibition all the way from my hometown in Bohemia. Like, I have to remember that in German, W's sound like V's. I'm very rich. Inspector Gina Lestrade, Scotland Yard. I'm a great detective, even Airlock Sholmes agrees. What in the world? I was on security duty at the exhibition, and I got to go up in one of the balloons, and it was amazing. Gina. Again. But she did mention that she'd seen the disaster from up on a balloon, actually, didn't she? And she clearly loved every minute of it. There were 3 balloons flying near the public experimentation stage when the incident occurred. 2 of these witnesses were in one such balloon at the time and saw events unfold from the skies above. You make it sound like they were in the clouds. It was only an altitude of circa 60 feet, very low. Well, you can't see nothing if you fly too high, can ya? 60 feet, about 18 meters then. That's pretty close. Thank you for your introductions. Now, you will give your formal testimony to the court. Kindly describe exactly what you witnessed, especially those of you who had a vantage point above the stage. It was an incidente terrible. I am only grateful that my balloons were not damaged. There's this huge bang from the stage, and the next second another bang in the sky beside us. And from amid the smoke, a cage appeared out of nowhere. The cage, it fell from sky like a stone, and crashed into the crystal tower. I didn't get a good look inside the cage, but no one went near it after it crashed into the tower. A most extraordinary collective account, I must say. Could I just clarify something? There's a detail in the witness's testimony that I have not heard any mention of until now. Specifically, that there were 2 explosions. More precisely, 2 explosions in 2 separate places, yes? This is like a special relativity thought experiment. If you're going fast enough, they might have seemed to have happened at the same time. And maybe, or different times in the same location. When the demonstration began, the balloon carrying the 2 witnesses was around here. There were other balloons in the air nearby at the time, carrying other passengers as well, to be clear. Then, as power was supplied to the machine for the demonstration, the first explosion occurred. The so-called birdcage that contained the victim disappeared from the stage, and a moment later, second explosion occurred directly adjacent to the balloon carrying the witnesses, which happens to be right on top of a balloon, but whatever. The birdcage appeared at the site of the explosion, subsequently to plummet down into Crystal Tower. I was very surprised. Suddenly a cage appeared before my eyes with a person inside. The blast was so hot, but I didn't want to miss a thing, so I kept my eyes wide. I still have lots of money. Precisely who is this curious infant? I'm told he's a young noble of Bohemian royalty. Apparently, he disguised himself in order to steal unnoticed from into the Great Exhibition. Ja, I am here in London on a sightseeing trip with my elementary school. We'll have to benefit a child's point of view in the testimony. We'll have to benefit. Okay. Do you really need that? Will I remove my mask? This is what I look like. Oh yes, freckles. Oh yes, I see. A delightful face, I'm sure. Jal, everyone says so. Great disguise, then. The point is, the testimony of these witnesses further substantiates the facts for the court. Namely, that despite ending in an explosion, instantaneous kinesis was successfully demonstrated. And furthermore, that until the arrival of the police, no one approached the Crystal Tower where the victim fell. Therefore, only the accused, who was with Mr. Esman on the stage, could possibly have committed the murder. Yes, thank you, counsel. The prosecution's views on the matter are quite clear. So, the defense's cross-examination now, please. Yes, my lord. Oh, my health goes restored. Okay. Well, that makes things less stressful. It was an incident, terrible. Okay.
Hold it!
There were 3 balloons flying above the experimentation stage at the time, I understand. Si. All 3 of them. My bellissimi bambini. So is this supposed to be he's supposed to be Italian, right? Is that what I'm supposed to get out of this? I mean, he kind of looks Italian. Looks kind of Mario. They were very popular, Signor. Some people will pay £10 for one ride. £10? That's more than my annual stipend. It's £20 a month. That is my pocket money. Royals have all the luck. I got up there for free, I did. Played the I work for Her Majesty's police card, you know. Detectives have all the luck. If they're so popular, why would you only be operating such a small number of balloons, though? Because if I have too many in disguise, they can crash into each other. The operators for the balloons were decided by lots, with each operator manning a particular area. C. And the zone above public experimentation stage is the most profitable. The other impresarios, they hate me. Thank you, witness. I think the court has a clear picture of the arrangements for balloon rides at the exhibition. Perhaps we could hear more about what you actually witnessed of the incident? Right, I can fill you in there, my lord. Okay, this is the important one. So you actually saw the accident happen from up in the air. Yep, ain't it amazing what a detective gets to do, eh? I'm telling you, Odo, being a lawyer's a mug's game. You should join the force so we can go flying together. You know me too well. Yes, well, anyway, could you tell us exactly what you saw, do you think? Everything. We saw everything, because we were up above it all. That dodgy cove climbing into the cage, and that dodgy professor pulling all them levers. And that's when it happened. That's when there was that massive bang and the stage disappeared just like that. Are you describing the moment the subject's body was decomposed by electricity, I believe? I didn't know what to make of it. But then there was another bang right in my ear. I looked around and there was a huge great fireball right next to us in the sky. And there was nothing there before. Skip to the German guy.
Excuse me.
Hummer. Master Gotts. Does your memory of the day differ? My teacher at elementary school said that when you meet someone for the first time, you should always use their full name. Yes, what was it again? Wilhelm Gottfried Sigmund Orstein. Just the 4 names, then? The point is, do you have something to say? Something to add in response to Detective Gino Lestrade's last remark, perhaps? Well, I get it right, Odo. It's Inspector Lestrade. Why does everyone have a problem with how I address them at the moment? That is not what I saw. Oh? Jazir was a second explosion, and it was right beside our balloons, that is true. But I'm sure, which is what I said in it, 1 minute there was nothing, the next there was a massive explosion. My teacher in elementary school said that's when someone else is speaking. If you are rude enough to interrupt, you will have the most awful life imaginable. Are all Bohemians brought up to be so full of joy? Just before the second explosion happened next to our balloon, I clearly witnessed a green balloon flying in the sky. A green balloon. Hey, you what? I never saw nothing like that. Well, I did. I saw it, and you can't say I didn't. Something green's really important somehow, right? I will complain to the council. I will cry and scream. My testimony is the truth. I am Bohemian Prince. You cannot say it's a lie. That is not allowed. Just playing the bleeding royalty card, are you? Typical. Says the orphan who likes to remind people she works for Her Majesty's police. In that case, young man, I must ask you to amend your formal testimony. In the interest of cordial national relations between Great Britain and Bohemia. It was not the skies that exploded, it was a green balloon that was next to ours at the time. Okay. We're gonna press this.
Hold it!
A green balloon, you say? Are you sure about that? Of course I am sure. I am a proud Bohemian prince. All these questions are making me boring. I think you mean bored. English is very annoying. The language of my countrymen is far superior. He's probably correct. Ragazzo, it is a very wrong to lie. Lie? Flying balloons never explode. For the same reason the planets never explode. It is logical. Why is the German sound exactly the same? I'm kind of saying the line's kind of weird. I realized the Italian guy and the German guy, I said them in the same weird way. It's just like generalized foreign way of talking. Please tell me that doesn't mean logical. If you insult me, you insult all of Bohemia. Then I will have the army come and shoot all of your stupid balloons out of the sky out of them. Here you are, Your Highness. If only all international incidents were so easily resolved. Now that peaceful relations have been restored here in the courtroom, perhaps we could return to the testimony. Did you also see the moment that the cage materialized, Mr. Loon? No, I did not see the explosion myself. However, the cage had fell from the sky like a stone and crashed into the crystal tower. I didn't get a good look inside the cage, but no one went near it after it crashed into the tower. The prosecution really is asserting the demonstration was genuine. But what if it was actually some kind of switch-around trick instead? That would mean that the victim was never actually on the stage in the first place. The two explosions would have thrown everyone watching into a panic for sure. So what was on the stage was a wax figure? I think I need to find out more about what exactly people saw at the time. Okay, so this could be wrong. His balloons could have been damaged. Because one of his balloons exploded. We already pressed this. I'm actually gonna press it again, just cause. 3. Okay. Doesn't really expound, really. Okay. Thing is, that's wrong. A balloon was damaged. But I don't know if we can really... We'll work on the presents later. Okay, so there's a huge bang. Next second, another bang in the sky beside us. We think that's true. Not the sky that exploded was a green balloon that was next to ours at the time. And this is the new thing, so this is the thing we want to... You would think we would present on, but we have to say it's wrong. And it seems right to me. That's the thing. The cage fell. Yes, it did. Sure. Okay. So, what do we have here? Armband. Newspaper. Probably not the newspaper. Crossbow. Okay, this is what you use to shoot balloon out of the sky. Okay. So this is kind of risky, but you would think that you would present on what would be a contradiction, right? So he says that my balloons were not damaged. Well, we have something of a piece of a damaged balloon. So we would present on this, and not on the little child statement that we would have agreed with. So my first thing I'm going to try is presenting this piece of damaged balloon, which I now realize what it is, on this statement.
Objection!
Mr. Loon, in your testimony, you said that all 3 of the balloons you had operating at the time were undamaged. See, that is correct. If they had been caught in the explosions, it would have been terrible. I wonder if you might know what this is. I think it may be... See, part of a balloon. A burnt piece of the fabric of the envelope. Sorry, the envelope? Pardon, that is a large round part of the balloon which becomes filled with hot air. It is made from very thick fabric lined with rubber. You do not want it to rip when you are in the sky. Just as I thought. This piece of cloth was found in the experimentation stage. In other words, as Master Gotts testified. A green balloon did indeed explode that day. If all the balloons in the sky above the experimentation stage belong to you, Mr. Loon, then your statement that they were all undamaged clearly contradicts the evidence. balloon explode that day. Why did the man say so? Maybe everyone is bored. Or was killed. Oh no, having spent 10 whole pounds for the experience. Seems to me like those things
Objection!
The instantaneous kinesis did occur, but after the explosion on the stage, the point of materialization shifted to a location occupied by a balloon. Causing the balloon to explode? Yes, eminently plausible. Unfortunate traffic accident, as it were, but it changed nothing about the pertinent facts. Fed's is absurd here. This I cannot accept. Why not, Mr. Loon? You are suggesting that I am a liar. That person's died in balloon incident. There's no need to get fired up, Mr. Loon. The victim was the sole fatality that day. That's right, and I prove it. Balthazar Lune is not a liar. There was no such balloon in the sky. It is not possible. You're saying it's impossible. Why? This court has more important matters to discuss than the number of balloons that were operating that day. I.e.
Objection!
We can't ignore the fact that nobody appeared to have known anything about this other balloon until now. My lord, the defense calls for further testimony from Mr. Loon. I concur. There is clearly more to the truth here than meets the eye. It's imperative that we clear up the issues of this phantom balloon, I feel. Witness, you will give supplementary testimony about the balloons that you were operating at the exhibition. Ah, Grazie, my lord. As I said, Balthazar Loon is no liar. Every balloon I had in the sky landed safely. All 3 of my balloons were carrying passengers. They fell to the ground in an explosion. What a catastrophe. But y'all can't get away from the fact that a burnt-up bit of cloth was found at the scene, can ya? The coppers at the yard reckoned it was probably some debris thrown from the explosion on the stage. This stupid ragazzo was mistaken. My balloons had the red and blue zigzag stripes anyway. So your assertion is that the balloon this child saw was not one belonged to you. Si, exactamente. If he even saw a balloon in the first place. This also could be Spanish as opposed to Italian, but whatever. I do not like the sound of it. It is very bad for business. I have a good mind to sue the land of Bohemia. If you attack us, we will fight back. It will be war. All out war. Oh, it's war. What happened to all out war? Mr. Loon certainly doesn't appear to be lying. But that doesn't change the fact that the testimony and evidence are contradictory here. If the defense is unable to find fault with the witnesses' test statements, the court must consider them the truth. Think long and hard on that, my learned friend. The situation has clearly changed now. I have to get to the bottom of what happened here, no matter what it takes. Counsel, you may now cross-examine the witnesses.
Hold it!
You couldn't just have forgotten one, maybe? Signor. I might not notice if I was given 100 lentils and one was missing. But we were talking about 3 enormous balloons. Do you believe I could make a mistake of something so grand and expensive? I took the liberty of having Inspector Gregson check this gentleman's warehouse. I have the report here. It clearly says a total of 3 balloons. It would appear no mistake has been made, then. Surely Miss Lestrade could have been sent for such a menial task. What, me? tell you what I told the boss. East End kids like me can only count up to 2. Obviously that ain't true, but the boss bought it and said he'd have to go himself in that case. Ha. Way to wear him down. All 3 of my balloons were carrying passengers. If they fell to the ground in an explosion, what a catastrophe.
Hold it!
It would be quite a catastrophe if they fell to the ground for any reason, I think. In that note, Mr. Loon, tell me, what is it that keeps these balloons in the sky? Are you an idiota? Sorry? That is like asking, why does a candle burn bright? It burns bright because it burns bright. And a balloon flies because it flies. What else? Ha. That must be Italian for I don't know. There are 2 types of flying balloons, hot air balloons and gas balloons. Hot air balloons work on the principle of hot air being less dense than cold air, whereas gas balloons derive their lift by using a gas that is lighter than air. See, and my balloons are filled with the magic gas, I believe. No, they're not. Hydrogen. Lighter than air, but highly explosive. Good lord. I do not permit smoking of cigarettes in any of my balloons. The magic gas does not like fire. Actually, it kind of does like fire. That's the problem. Even a small spark of static electricity can cause the entire balloon to explode. What is the matter with you, Signor? All that comes out of your mouth is explosion. I tell you, my balloons are perfectly safe. They have to be, or I cannot eat. None of my balloons exploded that day. I am completely sure. But if you still say that is what happened, you must show me the proof. Alright, so Mr. Loon had 3 balloons in the air that day. If none of them were damaged, then what was the one that exploded?
Hold it!
I was surprised to find the piece of fabric still at the scene, actually. Didn't you search the area surrounding the stage for clues? Nah, I'm not picking stuff up off the cart around me. Always works out way better. Dive into people's pockets instead. So much for the new career path. Mind you, the boss was on his hands and knees picking up all kinds of rubbish from the floor. Thing is, though, the cage went crashing into the crystal tower, didn't it? So that's where most of the investigating was going on. Even so, I would have thought someone from Scotland Yard would have gathered it up as evidence. Core, listen to you. You stumble across a bit of balloon and suddenly you're the best investigator in the world. Pardon? Well, you ain't got a badge, have ya? Like this one. I could arrest you with this if I wanted to. I wouldn't put it past her. Coming to think of it, there was talk of some scorching on the ground at a meeting we had about the investigation. Cowards at the yard reckoned it was probably some debris thrown from the explosion on the stage.
Hold it!
There was considerable damage to the stage and surrounding area, wasn't there? Yeah, some of the coves what were watching the experiment were caught in the blast and injured. Good job the old contraption didn't keel over, eh? I hadn't even considered that. It seems there was a great panic after the incident occurred. Nevertheless, the police shouldn't have missed a torn piece of envelope from a balloon. Inspector Gregson can expect repercussions. Like me swiping all his fish and chips, eh? Man's sole pleasure. None of this matters. A scrap of balloon envelope means nothing. Niet! This stupid ragazzo is mistaken. My balloons had the red and blue zigzag stripes anyway.
Hold it!
You mean the color is wrong? Si, signor. I don't have any green balloons in my warehouse. And yet a piece of green cloth was found at the scene. And it's unmistakably from a balloon. Well, I don't know how that can be. For the sake of argument, let's say that a green balloon did explode above the stage. You wouldn't therefore conclude that it happened on the day in question. Why not? There have been recreational balloon flights over Hyde Park operating from before the Great Exhibition. One could have exploded on some earlier date. Unfortunate, as I'm sure you'd agree. You believe it may have been from some earlier balloon accident that predates the exhibition? Si, exactamente. As the Signor says, it is not from one of my balloons. Clearly this little ragazzo from Bohemia is mistaken about what he saw.
Excuse me.
Is something wrong, Master Gotts? I'm Master Wilhelm Gotts Greek Sigmund Orstein. It was on the tip of my tongue. Just something is very wrong. I know what I saw. There was a green balloon there. I swear it over Bohemia. You can speak as much bad language as you like, but it changes nothing. If you do not have evidence, ragazzo, then I must tell your parents to punish you, eh? Perhaps we'll let the judge decide when it comes to punishments. Evidence? What is this evidence? To give a simple explanation, young man. A photograph, for instance. Some tangible proof of what you claim. Well, why didn't you say so sooner? I have the photograph here. Good gracious. What? I had not been up in a balloon for a little while, so I was very excited. I took lots of photographs. Of the Crystal Tower, of the Bohemian exhibit, of the streets of London, of the hotel cellar, the balloon, and the instantaneous kinesis experiment. Did you take a picture of that? Just a picture. Really? You did take one? But all I wanted was a ride in a balloon. I was not interested in boring experiments. Never mind that. Can you show us the photograph? Of course, and then you will see. You will see that I am not lying. That I really did see a green balloon. But it's black and white, though. Well, I see you're all too shocked to speak. Yes, I think shocked is indeed the word, young man. So perhaps you cannot see that it was a green balloon from the photograph, but that is not my fault. That is the fault of the stupid person who made the camera. That is one very Bohemian sounding cry. Oh yeah, the umlauts on the walls. Wow! Very well, the court will accept this photograph as evidence. It's not my fault. It's the fault of the person who made the camera. It's like, it was in God's plan that he made the devil stronger than a man. Anyway. See if there's an examine on this. No, just a magnifying glass. Okay. We have the guy in the cage. There is nobody in the balloon. That's important. What is this? A lot of very important things here. Like, that's not the crossbow. Yeah, there's a lot in there. Well, never mind. I'm sure you have plenty of wonderful sepia memories to take home with you. In any case, when exactly did you take that photograph? Well, it was on the day of the big explosion. You don't say. When I pressed the shutter release, there was this very loud bang, and a hot wind rushed over my face. That means this photograph was taken a split second before the explosion occurred. Well, if you ask me, this black and white photograph changes nothing. I would not give the flying fig. Well. Whoa. Lovely language you've picked up. As I thought, Mr. Loon's testimony just doesn't quite add up. The young bohemian boy claims to have seen another, fourth balloon. Mr. Loon vehemently denies the possibility, and it's hard to imagine the man in charge would be mistaken about the number that were in the air. Still, this inconsistency must tell us something, I'm sure. So all of his balloons landed safely. It's kind of true because this was not one of his balloons. All three of my balloons were carrying passengers. If they fell to the ground in an explosion or a catastrophe. But you can't get away from the fact that a burnt-up bit of cloth was found at the scene. Coppers in the yard reckoned it was probably some debris thrown from the explosion on the stage. I'll try to present on this. Because there's no passengers in this balloon. That's the problem.
Objection!
Unfortunately, the photograph Master Gotts took can't tell us the color of the balloon. But it can tell us something else. Something crucially important. What? It shows that the pictured balloon wasn't carrying any passengers. Oh my goodness, you're right. But surely all the balloons would have been carrying passengers. There would be no sense in it otherwise. See, they were for pleasure, for seeing the view. My balloons only fly with passengers. Which tells us that the pictured balloon isn't one of them. So when the incident occurred that day, there was a fourth balloon in the skies above the experimentation stage. The mysterious green balloon. Oh, Ace Attorney always gives me the hiccups. I know nothing yet. I can only tell you one thing. If this balloon was not carrying passengers, then it was not one of mine.
Objection!
There are illegal tradesmen everywhere you care to look. Clearly, one such entrepreneur decided to capitalize on the opportunity presented by the Red Exhibition and managed to operate balloon flights on Mr. Loon's patch without him realizing. See, the competition trying to steal my profits. I did not notice because of the experimento that went wrong on the stage. Well, no, if they really got any profits if there were no passengers in it, sir. This fourth balloon exploded at the very same moment Mr. Esmond was beamed from the stage below. Right, so then scraps that fell to the ground after and left them scorch marks. They didn't come from the stage at all. It was bits of the balloon raining down. Because no one was in it, it didn't get no attention. Mysterious fourth balloon carrying no passengers slightly floating over the experimentation stage.
Objection!
This photograph shows us nothing more. A stray balloon carrying no one and operated by some rogue trader. Clearly it has nothing to do with the case. Its relevance does elude me, I must say. The court has seen sufficient evidence and heard ample testimony already. The prosecution calls for this trial to be concluded. Really? Have we really got to the truth yet? No, I can't let this opportunity slip away. The jurors' minds are made up, and not in our favor. What else can this photograph tell us? Is there nothing more we can learn from it? Oh yes. There is so much more.
Objection.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, wait. Please don't give your decisions yet. Photograph from Estergots may well be hiding one more vital clue. What's that? A vital clue?
Objection.
We're well past the point of mere possibilities. It's time for definitives now. So tell the court. What exactly does this alleged clue in the photograph prove? The cause of the explosion. We can reasonably assume that the picture balloon was destroyed in the searing heat of an explosion. Jaws, that's right, Ja. It was not my fault. Evidently. Because the birdcage from the kinesis machine materialized in the sky where it had been flying. And the balloon, being filled with flammable hydrogen, instantly and explosively ignited.
Objection.
No, that's not what happened. What? It would appear that this photograph requires closer examination. Counsel for the defense, you will highlight the location of this alleged clue in the photograph for the court. Of course, my lord. If you look closely, it's plain enough to see. And what's shown is linked to another piece of evidence we have. In a way, that leads us to an unbelievable conclusion. As believable to me, the clue heavily suggests the real reason the balloon exploded is this right here. I'm gonna kind of get in the middle of it.
Take that.
The timing of this photograph can only be described as miraculous. If you look, you'll notice there's a bright white line that appears to point directly at the balloon. Most likely a ray of light caught incidentally on the film. I'm afraid I can see nothing of the sort. If you look with a magnifying glass, my lord, it becomes clear what the nature of this bright line really is. Goodness, what is that? Undeniably some flash of light, yes? Oh golly, do you think it might be lightning? What, it couldn't have been a finer day. I believe we may be looking at fire. A bolt of fire, heading straight for the balloon, like an arrow. Indeed, even in my aging eyes, it would appear to be a flame of some sort. My word, are you suggesting this flame struck the hydrogen gas that filled the balloon?
Objection.
That's absurd. The balloon would have been 60 feet above the ground at the time. No flame could possibly have reached such a height.
Objection.
Actually, in my opinion, a particular piece of evidence found at the scene reveals how that is exactly what did happen. What evidence? If such evidence exists, counsel, then for goodness sake, present it, man. Which evidence explains this mysterious streak of flame that appears to be headed directly for the balloon? The sky.
Take that.
This was found hidden at the foot of a small ornamental tree near the scene. Good lord, is that a crossbow? An arrow dipped in oil and set alight could have been shot from this weapon, sending a flaming arrow straight into the hydrogen-filled gas-filled balloon. Are you suggesting that crossbow was used to deliberately... Blimey, you're right. That streak of light in the photo looks just like an arrow, doesn't it? Then the explosion of the balloon it was. What idiot leaves the crossbow behind? Very unlikely there was also a flaming arrow from this crossbow ignited the hydrogen gas inside it. Order! Counsel, this is an extraordinary supposition. If the aim was to cause the balloon to explode, the shooter could have used a gun, of course. However, there are obvious reasons why that would have been out of the question. The noise of the discharge, of course. That's right. By using a crossbow, the projectile could be fired at the balloon silently. Well, yeah, if somebody had shot a gun off an exhibition grounds, it would have caused a real panic. But with the big explosion, there was a very big panic anyway, no? I don't think this I should be pleased to have found a plausible new explanation for all this, but something feels wrong.
Objection!
Do you understand the implications of what you're saying, my Nipponese friend? If a flaming arrow did indeed hit the balloon, then obviously it would have exploded. And if the birdcage appeared from the cloud of smoke that ensued... What? Wait a minute, what are you really saying here? I don't get it. Was the birdcage beamed up into the sky after all? Or what? My goodness me. Ah, now I understand. That's what that sinking feeling is about. I think there's a good chance that the birdcage was actually concealed inside the balloon all along. What? Did I just hear that correctly, Council? There's no going back now. The horse has bolted. Let's assume, as I said, that the birdcage was hidden inside the green balloon from the start. On stage, when the experiment was started, the birdcage and that instantaneous kinesis machine disappeared in a cloud of smoke. At that moment, the flaming arrow was fired from the ground, causing a green balloon to explode and drawing the attention of spectators to the sky above their heads. From amid the smoke, the hidden birdcage then appeared to fall down and crash into the crystal tower. I think you'll agree it's entirely plausible. From what I've just described is the real truth behind the miraculous experiment carried out that day. Good grief!
Objection!
This is ludicrous! What you've described is no science experiment. It's a child's play. A contemptible display of stage magic. Both Mr. Sholmes and Iris said that the experiment was a scientific impossibility, in which case this is the only way to explain what happened that day. And in any case, the victim's body was found inside the birdcage in the crystal tower. If the instantaneous kinesis didn't take place, how do you explain that? It's a wax model. If I may put in a word of a man of magic myself, such apparent discrepancies can easily be explained by some simple deception. Juror number 3. All that would be needed is a doppelganger, someone who looked very similar to the victim, Mr. Isman, and having this other man appear on stage in front of the show as a body double. Yes, of course, so in fact. Mr. Isman must have been inside the birdcage that was concealed inside the balloon right from the start.
Objection!
That balloon would have been filled with hydrogen. Anything hidden inside would have been scattered to the four winds when it exploded. No one would ever have embarked on such a risky venture. Not necessarily. The explosion force of the balloon gas would be very much depend upon the mixture ratio. Juror number 4. Flying balloons are rarely filled with pure hydrogen, but a mixture of other gases such as helium as well. Helium on its own doesn't explode, but by controlling the gas mixture ratio, the explosive force can be altered. The mixture ratio? Obviously, the victim's body would have suffered some burns. That would be unavoidable. But not to such an extent as to render the whole obscene charade impossible. So everything that happened can be explained, logically and scientifically. The explosion that engulfed the stage at the start of the experiment was no accident. It was all part of an elaborate deception, to make it appear that instantaneous kinesis had occurred. Well, goodness me. And if we accept that this is what happened, it means that the victim, Mr. Isman, was never present on the public experimentation stage to begin with. Nurg. In short, he couldn't have been killed by the defendant, who was on stage in full view the entire time. This will be very hard for the prosecution to counter. Lord Van Zykes can't credibly maintain that Professor Harebrain is a suspect now. Just you wait. Hairbrain's gonna mess himself up. Mr. Naruhodo, I appreciate your efforts, thank you. Professor? But you can't stop now. Just keep your mouth shut, please. Sorry. What's this all about, Mr. Hairbrain? I, Albert Hairbrain, hereby confess that it was me who stabbed Mr. Odie Asmund. Yes, it was me with my faithful friend and partner, Andrew the Screwdriver. What are you doing? Oh, defendant, explain the sudden confession. Professor Hairbrain, what are you talking about? It's what I've said all along. I must protect my hypothesis and my precious machine. You stand there and claim it was all a trick, all an elaborate prank, but where's your proof? No, you'd have to examine the machine if you wanted to prove it, but then it would all be over. My beautiful hypothesis would be laid bare. I mean, the indignity of it. It's clear that you drew the plans for the experiment, but you didn't actually build it. It's quite conceivable that you were duped, Professor. If you will just let me... Byrock! Yes? I'll cooperate, I'll do whatever you say, I swear it. So please, ensure the Special Dispensation for Scientific Equipment Act is adhered to protect my creation. Pray forgive the discourtesy of fulfilling my hallowed chalice at this critical juncture. Here's to my learned Nipponese friend. What? And his upcoming attempt to clarify the defense's position in the light of the accused's confession. Do you intend to formally assert that the experiment was nothing more than a conjuring trick? Because the moment you do, the Special Dispensation for Scientific Equipment Act that protects the professor's invention will cease to apply. The prosecution will then demand a rigorous examination of the machinery involved in order to establish the truth. Do it. However, if you acknowledge that the machine is genuine and instrumental in the victim's murder, any chance of investigating will be crushed, and the confidentiality of the professor's hypothesis preserved. Well, counsel, what is the defense's official position on the matter? What Professor Hairbrain, my client, actually asked from me was to prove that the explosion on stage was an accident to protect the secrecy of his hypothesis. But there's no way to do that without implying the professor's guilt. Do I protect my client's life by asserting his innocence, or do I uphold my client's request to see him condemned? Either way, I can't avoid betraying his trust. You've been silent long enough. Isn't talking your trade, you learned friend? Or has all knowledge of English escaped your confused Nipponese mind? I don't see why this is a hard question, Rinosuke. Truth! Mr. Naruhodo! There's no escape here. I have to make a choice. But it's an impossible one. I have to give up on something. But what? The defense asserts that the defendant's instantaneous kinesis machine was in fact... Truth! No, I can't say it. My client placed his faith in me. I can't let him down. What must I give up on is not the question you have to ask yourself. It's what can I protect? Hello again, Mr. Naruhodo. It's been far too long. Susato-san. You just machined. Ah! My first Susato takedown in 6 months. There'll be time to talk later, Mr. Naruhodo. For now, we must concentrate on the task at hand. Which is working out not what I have to give up on, but what can I protect. Professor Hairbrain. Yes? Yesterday you told me that science is the pursuit of truth. Well, my job is to pursue the truth too. Yes, of course. And personally, I believe that you didn't stab Mr. Asmund. I think you've come to realize something yourself too, haven't you? That your experiment and the machine you built with the victim are questionable. The truth behind that is what we must both pursue now. So, you finally opened your eyes. What? And as for you, Albert, you can't ignore this any longer. It's like, I knew what I was doing the whole time. Or at least I'm pretending I did, having heard my learned friend's assertion. Don't you have something to say? Barak. Lord Van Zeitz. Gosh, I've never heard him speak that way before. In truth, there is one thing. Something I've remembered that's relevant. What? On the day it happened, just before I began the experiment, I saw a man near the stage. A man holding that crossbow. I beg your pardon? Professor? Did the man have any distinguishing features? What did he look like? Tall. Taller than me, and, thin. Thinner than me, with straight hair, straighter and whiter than mine. Let me see, one less lens than me too. A monocle. A rather stylish black monocle. Well, one thing in particular will help to positively identify the man. You see, I know him very well. After all, he's the engineer who built my invention. What? He built the machine? That's right. Mr. Asman introduced me to him a year ago. He's a man by the name of Enoch Drebber. Drebber? Does this name mean something? Members of the jury seem flustered. Not a name many scientists wishes to hear. The man's an abomination. Not a name any conjurer wishes to hear either. Who on earth is he? I'm afraid this isn't the first tale of his nature that I've heard in scientific circles in connection with that name. There's talk of other flamboyant experiments that turn out to be nothing but stage trickery in the end. Obviously, the rascal is after the government's research grant money. When magicians are in need of money, I have heard of them resorting to these underhanded tactics. Some acquaintances of mine with experience of such things have mentioned Enoch Drebber's name before. The man is both an engineer and a magician. Yes, we're dealing with an unparalleled confidence trickster here. That's Enoch Drebber for you. So it's true then. My invention, my great machine, it was just a grand illusion. Considering what we've just heard about Mr. Drebber's character, I'm sorry to say that sounds increasingly likely. Even though no one else believed it, I wanted to. I wanted to believe that machine would function exactly as my hypothesis predicted. Which is why you were so opposed to it being investigated, I presume. I knew it if the machine was examined in detail, its construction would give away my hypothesis. Obviously, I didn't want that to happen. But at the same time, I knew that it was found to be nothing more than a trick, than a work of deception. Then everything I'd worked towards, all my research, all my dreams, my whole life would be over. I was terrified at the prospect. So you really had no idea then, did you? About the true nature of the machine that was built, and the true nature of Mr. Drebber. I never questioned anything. I didn't want to question it. It's entirely possible that Mr. Asman and Mr. Drebber, working together to use you as a means of fraudulently acquiring the research grant money. When I announced my invention to the crowds that day, it was the finest moment of my career. I pulled all the levers and turned all the dials in exactly the way Drebber had described. When the smoke suddenly started billowing out, I panicked. I didn't know what was happening. But I really don't know how the whole illusion was made to work. I don't know anything anymore. Let me confirm one final point with you, Professor. Do you now consent to the prosecution submitting the necessary paperwork to release your invention from the protection afforded by the Special Dispensation for Scientific Equipment Act? Yes, please go ahead. I'm very sorry. It would appear that we shall have to suspend proceedings for the remainder of the day now. Lord Van Zykes. My lord, the court has newly been made aware of another party whose involvement in this matter is critical. Yes, Mr. Drebber. Gather information about the man. If possible, I should have him served with a subpoena. With pleasure, my lord. Now, counsel for the defense. Yes, my lord? When we reconvene, I shall be looking for one thing and one thing alone from you. Evidence that the defendant is innocent of the crime for which he presently stands accused. I understand. Good. In that case, this court is adjourned until tomorrow morning. And there we go. I survived. Survived with, no game overs or any saves made with the express purpose of precluding a game over. Mr. Naruhodo. Ah, yes. I'm so sorry. I was wrong, you were right. I tricked you. You trusted me. I dragged you into a mess. How did I ever come to this? It's just my job to be a defense attorney. That's what I do, Hairbrain. You shouldn't apologize to me. Just pay me money. Do you really have no idea, Professor, about what Mr. Drebber was really up to? I mean, what he was really constructing. Naturally, that machine was the embodiment of my hypothesis, of all my hopes and dreams. I had complete faith in it. Alright, in that case, I wouldn't say any more. Now, sadly, the murder accusations against you still stands, so we must do as much investigation as we can before the trial resumes tomorrow. No, thank you for doing so much for me. The reason why, yeah, this is what I was... So sorry for arriving late this morning, Mr. Naruhodo. Arriving late? Didn't you receive my postcard? I wanted to let you know when I'd arrive. Postcard? What postcard? I hid it from you, Runo, so it would be a surprise. But that's kind of not what Susato wanted. Well, did it work? I was surprised, alright, especially when she threw me to the ground. Oh dear, I'm so sorry. I was just so happy to see you again that I sort of slipped out. Maybe we could stick to more traditional displays of emotion in future? Susie's train was late into London, Victoria this morning, you see. But we made the coachman really whip the horses hard, so she didn't miss the whole trial. I was watching from the gallery for a while, but in the end, I'm afraid I couldn't contain myself. Well, I'm glad you didn't. Oh, having you at my side in court gives me the strength I need to win. So, I'm, delighted to see you back in London. Oh, you're too kind, Mr. Naruhodo. I'm delighted to be here. I hope I can continue to be of service to you. Of course, so, what's brought you back? Did Professor Mikotoba not protest? Let's save all that conversation for when we're back at home, shall we? You know, I've made one of my most special blends ever for this special occasion. Oh, Iris, how wonderful. I can't wait. Susanto-san was back in London. It's hard to describe how happy that made me feel at the time, but despite my elation, our tale was about to take yet another extraordinary turn. And that's it.